Welcome back for another deep dive. Last time we got our feet wet with Tkinter Treeview, saw how it can really wrangle data.
Yeah. Make it all nice and organized, easy to understand.
But we were just scratching the surface, right?
Definitely. There's so much more we can do with Treeview.
Today we're going to go beyond those basics. We're going to make Treeview dynamic, adding data on the fly. Think like a living, breathing interface.
Exactly. It's so much more powerful when users can interact with the data, not just view it.
Right. And to guide us on this journey, we have this awesome resource from Plus2Net. It's a website with tons of web development tutorials.
It's a gold mine for anyone working with web technologies. Always something new to learn there.
By the end of this, you'll be looking at Treeview in a whole new light, ready to supercharge your own Tkinter projects. So are you ready to unlock this next level of Tkinter mastery?
Absolutely. Let's dive in.
Okay, so the heart of all this dynamic magic is a method called insert.
Aptly named, I'd say. This is how we add those new rows to a tree view. The parent nodes, the main entries in our data structure. Think of it like creating those main folders in a filing system.
I like that. So if my tree view is showing customer information, each new customer would be a new parent node.
Precisely. Now, here's where it gets interesting. To really leverage the power of insert, we need to understand its parameters. We have parent, index, and id. These give us that granular control over where each new row goes and how it's identified.
Okay, let's break those down, starting with parent. Seems pretty straightforward, determines where the new data goes in the hierarchy.
Exactly. If parent is empty, we're adding a top-level row. But if we want a nested structure, we specify the aid of an existing row. Make it a child node.
Like creating subfolders within a main folder.
You got it. Then we have index, controls the position of the new row within its parent. Add it to the end, the beginning, or even a specific spot within the existing order.
Oh, so I can make a new entry appear right at the top of the list if I need to.
Exactly. And finally, we have eat. This is the unique identifier for each row. You can assign one yourself or leave it blank, and Treeview will generate one for you.
That's convenient. But why is it so important to have a unique ID for every row?
Imagine trying to update or delete a specific array later on. Without that unique ID, it'd be a nightmare. Eat acts like a label, makes it easy to pinpoint and work with individual rows.
Right, that makes sense. So we've laid the conceptual groundwork. We understand how insert works, how to use its parameters. Now I'm really eager to see it in action.
Me too. Let's look at some code. The Plus2Net tutorial has a nice example we can use as a starting point.
Perfect. I'm ready to get my hands dirty.
All right, first things first, we import those modules we'll need, a Tkinter STK, and of course, TTK for our tree view, like gathering the tools before we start a project.
Then we create our main window, the stage for our tree view performance.
Right, we'll give it a title, set the size, make it visually appealing for the users. Now, for the star of the show, we create the tree view object itself. Plus2Net calls it TreeRV, but remember, you can choose any name that makes sense for your project.
Something descriptive like customer tree view or product list always helps readability.
Absolutely. We then use trv.grid to position it within the window, give it a nice spacious layout. Now we define the structure of our tree view. Set up those columns using TreeV columns, assigning a number to each column for identification.
So if I wanted columns for customer ID, name, and email, I'd have 1, 2, and 3. Simple as that.
Exactly. And to make sure everything is clear, we make those column headers visible, using TreeShow as headings. No more mystery data.
Love the transparency. But we're not done with columns yet, right?
Right. We want it to look good. We'll use TRV.column to customize the width and alignment of each column, like making sure the columns are the right size for the data and everything's neatly aligned.
It's all about that user-friendliness.
Exactly. And finally, we use trv.heading to give each column a descriptive header. Make it crystal clear what each column represents.
Like name, email, and purchase history for our customer list. Perfect.
Now, to illustrate this structure, Plus2Net adds an initial record using the insert method, just to give us a visual. And this record uses an empty string for the parent because it's top level. And then N for the index, which places it at the bottom of the tree view.
It's like a little welcome sign, showing us the structure is ready to go.
Great way to think about it. But the real fun starts when we add those input fields, where users can enter their own data. That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive. It's amazing how such simple elements, the insert method and its parameters, can unlock so much potential.
Right. The fundamentals often make the biggest impact. You know, you mentioned 8 earlier, and I wanted to circle back to that. We talk about how it uniquely identifies each row, But what are some of the common pitfalls developers run into when working with EID?
That's a great question. One common mistake is not managing aid values properly. Each aid has to be unique. If you accidentally give two different rows the same aid, things can get messy, especially when trying to update or delete specific data.
Yeah, like giving two houses on the same street the exact same address. Total chaos.
Exactly. We need those unique identifiers to keep everything organized. Another pitfall is forgetting about aid management when dealing with large data sets or data from external sources like a database. Things can get complex quickly if you're not careful.
Good point. Definitely something I'll be mindful of. Now, shifting gears a bit. We have our tree view structure. How do we actually bring user input into the picture?
That's where input fields come in. Think of them as the bridge between the user and the tree view. We can use all sorts of Tkinter widgets, text boxes, option menus, radio buttons, even checkboxes. It all depends on the kind of data we need to collect.
Like if we were building an app to manage customer orders, we could have text boxes for customer name, order details, maybe an option menu to select a product, even a checkbox to mark it as a rush order.
Exactly, you're getting it. Those input fields make it intuitive for users to interact with the application.
Okay, so we have these input fields set up. What's next? How do we actually get that data from those fields into the tree view?
That's where our friend the add data function comes in, the behind-the-scenes worker. Takes that user input and integrates it seamlessly. The +2net example shows us exactly how it works.
All right, I'm ready for a step-by-step breakdown.
Okay, so first, add data needs to collect the information from the input fields. It uses methods like get for text boxes and option menus. It's like gathering the ingredients before cooking. We need that data to work with.
Makes sense. So what happens next?
Once we have the data, add data uses the insert method, remember that. To create a new row in the tree view, we specify the parent, index, and EID, and of course we pass in the data we just gathered. That becomes the content of the new row.
That's the moment it all comes together. User input turned into structured data in our tree view.
Exactly. And there's a couple more things. The +2net example resets the input fields after the data's been added, clears the form for the next entry.
Nice touch. Keeps things tidy for the user.
Right. And lastly, it provides feedback to the user, maybe displays a confirmation message, something like data added successfully.
It's all about that user experience.
Wow.
Okay, so we've gone from understanding insert to seeing it in action. Input fields, the add data function. This is really powerful stuff.
It is. And while we're focused on this dynamic functionality today, I do want to touch on something you mentioned before, database integration. In our next episode, we'll explore how to connect this to a database like MySQL. Think about it, storing and retrieving data all within your Tkinter application.
That's a perfect segue. We are going to cover that in depth next time, but I know some listeners are probably wondering how this dynamic setup would even work with a database. What are some of the key things they should keep in mind as they start thinking about that next level?
Well, for starters, they'll need to think about validating and sanitizing user input before it goes to the database. Don't want any unexpected data causing trouble.
Right. Security first. What else?
They'll also need to consider how to retrieve data from the database and dynamically populate the tree view. It's a bit more involved than just reading from input fields, but the possibilities are huge.
Okay, so we've piqued their interest, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's stay focused on mastering this dynamic tree view using the +2net example. I want our listeners to feel empowered, ready to build their own dynamic applications.
Absolutely. Let's jump back into the code, break down those input fields in more detail.
Okay, so let's get into those input fields. +2net sets up a few different types. Text boxes for name and mark, an option menu for class using Tkinter's option menu, and radio buttons for gender using radio button.
A whole toolkit of user input options, each widget designed for a specific type of data, makes it easy for the user.
I like that they used a mix of input types. Shows how versatile Tkinter can be.
Right. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. You can really tailor these fields to fit your application's needs.
So if I'm building a task manager, I might add a date picker for deadlines or a drop-down to assign tasks to different team members.
Exactly. The possibilities are endless.
Okay, so we have the input fields ready to go. The user enters their information, but how do we connect that input to our add data function?
That's where the add record button comes in. The bridge between user input and that add data. Magic. User clicks the button, it triggers the function, tells it the data is ready to go.
Like hitting the go button on a complex machine.
Perfect analogy. And inside the add data function, first things first, retrieve the values from each of those input fields. Plus 2net uses get to grab the data from text boxes and option menus.
So gather all the pieces before assembling the puzzle.
Exactly. We need all that data ready before we can create a new row in the tree view.
Okay, makes sense. And then insert comes into play. Uses the collected data to build the new row.
Yep. We give it the parent, index, ELI parameters, tell it where the row goes, and of course pass in those values from the input fields. That becomes the content of the new row.
It's like watching an assembly line in action.
I love that. And remember, plus 2net resets those input fields after the row is added, keeps the form clean, ready for the next entry.
It's all about those little touches that make a big difference in user experience.
Right. And don't forget that confirmation message, data added successfully, lets the user know everything went smoothly.
Always good to give that feedback. Well, we've come a long way. Started with the basics of dynamic tree view. Explored the insert method, those all-important parameters, saw how to make it all come to life with input fields and the add data function. Even got a glimpse of database integration, which, by the way, we'll be diving deep into next episode.
I can't wait. That opens up a whole new world of possibilities.
But for now, I encourage everyone to take what we've learned and experiment. Grab that code from plus 2net. Play around with it. See what you can build. You might even discover something new, something we haven't even thought of.
That's the exciting part about programming. There's always more to learn, more to explore, and we'll be here to guide you along the way, deeper and deeper into Tkinter Treeview.
Until then, happy coding, everyone.